My name is Hannah Carter. I'm 36 years old. While most women my age were building careers, falling in love, or learning how to live for themselves, I had already spent half my life making sure my younger brother never felt how harsh the world could be. I didn't go to his wedding expecting applause or gratitude wrapped in polished speeches. I went because I had earned my place in that room through years of sacrifice. I went as the woman who worked double shifts, gave up college, sold her jewelry, and pretended to be fine so a frightened boy could grow into a man with a future. So when I walked into that elegant reception hall, wearing the best dress I could afford and carrying a quiet sense of pride, I truly believed I was about to witness one of the happiest moments of my life. Then I found my seat. The place card was ivory, handwritten, and clearly expensive. It sat in front of a crystal glass and polished silverware as if it belonged. I picked it up with a small smile already forming, and then I read it. Poor uneducated sister, my brother's freeloader. For a moment, the room seemed to vanish. Then the laughter began. Not shocked or nervous, but comfortable laughter. The kind people share when they feel safe being unkind. My fingers tightened around the card, my throat burned. I wanted to put it down, stand straight, and leave with what dignity I had left. But before I could move, my brother caught my wrist and stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. His voice cut through the room. Whoever thought humiliating my sister today was funny is about to learn how costly disrespect can be. The laughter stopped instantly. He was still holding my hand, and for the first time since I had entered the ballroom, I wasn't the embarrassed relative under quiet judgment. I was the reason the groom had halted his own reception. People turned, conversations froze, even the musicians in the corner fell silent. Across the room, the bride's father slowly stood, composed and controlled, like a man used to authority. I heard someone nearby say his name, Mark Whitmore. He didn't hurry. He adjusted his cuff, smoothed his jacket, and looked at me with clear dismissal. "Jake," he said, almost amused, "sit down before you embarrass yourself further." That was the second label of the night. Jake, my younger brother, the boy I had raised, now standing firm in a way I had only seen a few times before. Once when a landlord tried to evict us in the rain, and once when a teacher mocked my thrift store shoes in front of him. "No," Jake replied. "You're going to explain why my sister's seat card says freeloader." A few guests shifted, but Mark remained calm, even smiling without warmth. "Don't be dramatic. It was a joke. I'm sure she's used to worse." That comment drew a few uncomfortable laughs. My stomach tightened, but I kept my head high. I wouldn't cry for them. Nearby, a woman in pale silk whispered that this was why class mattered. I recognized her as the bride's mother, Patricia, composed and cold. Jake stepped forward. "Say one more thing about my sister," he said quietly, "and this stops being about your daughter's wedding and starts revealing what kind of man you are." That changed the room. Not because people suddenly cared, but because they sensed risk. Wealth can tolerate cruelty. It fears exposure. Mark's tone sharpened. "Everything you have exists because my daughter chose you. Because my family opened doors. That woman didn't build you, she held you back." I felt Jake's grip tighten before he answered, louder now. "My sister fed me before herself. She worked nights so I could finish school. She sold the only necklace our mother left her so I could buy textbooks. If that makes her a freeloader, then your definition of value is wrong." The silence that followed felt heavier. Mark glanced toward the back of the room and quietly lifted his phone. Not to call security. He was more calculated than that. He spoke calmly, asking for the prenup attorney and placing a hold on a transfer they had discussed. Jake heard it. I heard it. In that moment, it became clear this wasn't about a single insult. This was about control, about using money to shape consequences. Jake looked at him steadily. "Thank you," he said. Mark frowned. "For what?" Jake's voice was controlled. "For showing everyone exactly who you are. If someone with power could erase your future with a single call, what would you do? Walk away or stay and challenge it?" The bride had remained silent until then, standing still under the lights. When she finally moved, she stepped toward Jake. "Stop," she said, though her voice wavered. That was when I heard her name, Emily. "You need to decide," Jake told her, "whether this is a wedding or a warning." The room seemed to pause. Emily Whitmore wasn't what I had expected when I first met her. She carried the polish of wealth, but not its harshness. I had seen uncertainty in her before, the kind that comes from loving someone your family approves of in theory, but not in reality. She loved Jake for who he could be. Her father valued what he could gain. Now, standing there with that card still in my hand, she looked at me as if she finally understood that marrying him meant confronting her own family. "Emily, come here," Mark said firmly. She didn't move. Patricia stepped in, urging her to calm the situation. Emily swallowed, then looked at me again, not with pity, but with clear shame. "Did you know?" I asked, needing honesty more than comfort. Her eyes filled immediately. "No," she said. "I swear, I didn't." It should have been enough, but humiliation lingers, and I had learned not to trust quick apologies. Jake spoke before I could respond. "Then prove it." Emily flinched. Mark stepped forward, insisting she owed no explanation. Jake released my hand and faced the room. "No," he said. "Everyone here owes my sister an answer, because you all laughed before knowing if she'd endure it." In that moment, memories surfaced sharply. I saw Jake at 8, sick at the kitchen table while I cooled his fever before heading to work. At 14, pretending he didn't need money while I took extra shifts. At 17, holding a scholarship letter, understanding what it had cost. Emily's voice broke through. "I know what she did for you," she said. Mark dismissed it with a laugh. "You know the sentimental version." Emily turned to him quickly. "No," she replied, her voice steady now. "I know the truth. Jake told me everything. How she raised him, how she sacrificed her own future. And you labeled her a freeloader," she added. Patricia tried to interrupt, but Emily continued. "When should I speak? After we celebrate? After we praise people who humiliated the woman who kept your future son-in-law going?" Some guests looked away. Others watched closely as the balance shifted. Mark's expression hardened, the kind that likely intimidated many over the years. "Be careful," he told her. "You're emotional." Emily let out a brief, disbelieving laugh. "No, Dad," she said. "I'm clear." The impact was immediate, not because it was loud, but because it challenged him directly. Men like Mark expect resistance from outsiders, not from their own family. They never expect it from the daughter they raised to follow without question. Jake looked at Emily with a mix of pain, hope, and disbelief. "Did you know your father planned to control our accounts after the wedding?" he asked. Emily turned sharply toward Mark. He didn't respond, and that silence answered everything. "Dad," she said again, quieter this time. Mark finally spoke, but his confidence had weakened. It was a legal precaution. Emily looked at him as if something fundamental had just broken. "You were going to begin our marriage with control and consequences." Mark's jaw tightened. "I was trying to protect you?" "From what?" she asked. "From love, loyalty, a man who stands up for his sister?" The question moved through the room, and I could feel the atmosphere shifting. Not out of principle, but because people tend to distance themselves from cruelty once it stops appearing powerful. I stepped forward then. For all of Jake's courage and Emily's realization, this was still my humiliation, and I refused to disappear inside it. "Mr. Whitmore," I said, "I don't need your approval. I didn't come here for your money, your status, or your blessing. I came because my brother wanted me beside him on the most important day of his life. If the only way your family welcomes me is through public insult, then whatever you built has clearly failed where it matters most." Mark looked at me with open disdain. "You think a speech makes you equal?" "No," I replied. "I think character does." Emily's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Jake reached for her hand, and after a brief hesitation, she accepted it. That was the moment the wedding stopped being a performance and became a clear divide. Mark didn't raise his voice. Instead, he smiled with controlled patience. "Very moving," he said. "The hard-working sister, the loyal brother, the enlightened bride. If this were a film, people might applaud." No one did. He turned to Jake. "But this is reality. And in reality, people like me decide whether people like you rise or stay where they started." Jake remained steady. "I'd rather stay honest at the bottom than corrupt at the top." Mark nodded slowly. "Pride disguised as virtue. You think struggle makes you noble. It doesn't. It makes you bitter." I had heard that idea many times from those who had never faced real hardship. They prefer to label poverty as either romantic or shameful, but never dignified. Jake stepped forward again, but I touched his arm and he stopped, I recognized the look in Mark's eyes. He had moved past insult and was now calculating consequences. He picked up his phone again, this time openly. "Charles," he said when the call connected, "withdraw the junior analyst offer from Carter immediately, and inform Hensley Development that if they proceed with him after tonight, our investment discussion ends." Emily gasped. "Dad, what are you doing?" He covered the phone briefly. "Teaching him scale." Then he continued, "Also, cancel the foundation grant review for the Sisters Literacy Project. I don't reward public displays." My body went cold. Very few people in that room knew that alongside my job, I had spent the past 2 years trying to open a small literacy center for children in our neighborhood, kids growing up the way Jake and I had. I had applied for 3 grants. One of them, apparently, had reached him. He knew. Jake moved toward him, but 2 groomsmen stopped him. "You don't touch him," one said, not out of loyalty, but because events like this train people to protect status over truth. "Let go of me," Jake said through clenched teeth. Emily stepped directly in front of her father. "Hang up." Mark looked at her as if she were interrupting business. "Move." She didn't. "Hang up, or I walk out of this wedding and I don't come back." The room shifted again. Patricia's expression changed. "Emily, don't say something you can't undo." Emily didn't look at her. "Try me." For the first time, I saw uncertainty on Mark's face. Not regret, but the possibility of losing something real. He slowly lowered the phone, though the damage was already done. Jake pulled free and stood there, breathing hard, balanced between restraint and reaction. "You just proved why she never belonged in this family," Mark said, referring to me. "No," Emily answered. "You just proved why maybe I don't." That statement carried more weight than anything said before. It came from the one person he never expected to oppose him. He looked at her as if seeing her differently for the first time. "You are making a mistake." Emily lifted her chin. "No, I'm making a clear choice." Patricia moved closer, lowering her voice. "Think about the guests, the photographer, the donors. Stop this now." Emily turned to the room. "Since everyone is already watching, then they should see the truth. My father humiliated the woman who raised the man I love. He tried to control our marriage before it began. If anyone here still calls that class, then perhaps money has replaced judgment." Some guests looked uncomfortable, some offended, others disengaged, but the dynamic had shifted. Mark recognized it. When he couldn't control the room, he withdrew. "Enjoy this moment," he said coldly. "By tomorrow, you'll understand that words don't protect you from consequences." Then he left, not in anger, but with controlled intent. Jake looked ready to follow, but Emily stopped him. "No, let him go. He'll escalate if he still has attention." I looked at the doorway where he had exited and felt a deeper certainty settle in. This was no longer about a single insult. It had become a conflict initiated by someone who believed influence should outweigh everything else. And I knew that by morning, he would act on it. The wedding continued in form, but not in substance. The cake was cut, the band played, guests moved through rehearsed gestures, but the atmosphere had changed. The event no longer matched the reality. Smiles felt forced, conversations hollow. Jake and Emily exchanged vows in a quiet, unsteady ceremony, with only a few truly present. I stood toward the back, not to withdraw, but to give them a moment that belonged to them, rather than the situation that had overtaken it. The next morning at 6:12 a.m., my phone rang. Jake's name appeared, and I answered immediately. "He did it," Jake said. His voice was strained. "The job offer is gone." I sat up. "What?" "Hensley sent an email this morning. They've decided to go in another direction. Emily confirmed her father spoke to one of their investors last night." I closed my eyes. "And the grant?" There was a pause. "I'm sorry," Jake said. "That too." I didn't respond right away, not out of surprise, but because there is a specific kind of harm in targeting the future someone is trying to build for others. The Literacy Center was never about me. It was about children who deserved access to books before being defined by limitations. "Hannah," Jake said. I exhaled slowly. "I'm thinking." Emily came on the line, her voice strained. "This is my fault." "No," I said immediately. "This is his decision." "He cut off the trust fund this morning," she said quietly. "He froze the apartment transfer. He told my mother I can return home alone or not at all." That part affected me more than I expected. Not because I mourned lost wealth, but because I heard the child in her voice. the daughter realizing that love could cost her the idea of home. "Where are you?" I asked. "At Jake's place." "Good. Stay there." About an hour later, Emily came to my apartment wearing jeans, no makeup, her hair tied back, without the polished image she had worn at the wedding. She looked younger, more grounded, more real. Jake came with her, tense and angry, as if that anger was the only thing holding him steady. We sat in my small kitchen, the same one where I had once stretched meals with cereal and canned food, and for the first time, the gap between our lives felt honest rather than distant. Emily reached into her bag and slid her phone across the table. "There's more," she said. It was a video, unclear and obviously not meant to be shared. Mark sat in a private dining room with several people I recognized from the reception. He was relaxed, drinking and speaking casually. "The sister," he said in the recording, "has a martyr complex in an off-the-rack dress. The boy is talented, but talent without background is still a risk. Once Emily is legally protected, he'll either learn gratitude or learn limitation." Someone asked, "And the sister?" Mark responded with a slight smirk. "The freeloader? She's only useful as emotional leverage. Remove that, and he'll follow direction." My hand went still. Jake reacted sharply, and Emily looked unwell. "Who recorded this?" I asked. "My cousin Natalie," Emily said. "She sent it after the wedding. She was upset, but afraid to go public." "There's another clip," she added, opening a second video. This one was more direct. Mark sat in the same setting, speaking with casual confidence. "People in poverty often present sacrifice as something noble," he said. "It's usually failure with better storytelling." I watched until the words blurred, then placed the phone face down, not because I couldn't listen further, but because I understood something clearly. People like Mark depend on maintaining two images, private judgment and public refinement. Their influence remains because most people never see both sides together. Jake looked at me. "Say the word and I'll upload this now." I shook my head. "Not yet." He paused. Emily looked equally surprised. "He's already damaged your job and your project," she said. "Why wait?" "Because if we act now," I explained, "he'll frame it as emotional retaliation. He'll manage the narrative, present you as unstable, me as resentful, and himself as a protective parent." Jake leaned back, frustrated. "So what's the plan?" I looked at Emily. "We let him speak first." She understood before Jake did. "A family meeting," she said slowly. "Yes," I replied. "You request it, not to argue, but to resolve things. We stay calm, respectful, and give him the chance to respond appropriately. If he refuses or confirms his actions while assuming control, then we don't just have claims, we have evidence." Jake's anger shifted into focus. "You want him to expose himself?" "No," I said. "I want others to see him clearly, without presentation." Emily nodded. "He'll agree if he believes he can regain control." "Exactly," I said. Jake looked between us, calmer now. "Then we finish this properly." That afternoon, Emily contacted her father. By evening, he agreed to meet 3 days later at his home. Patricia would attend, along with Mark's attorney, which wasn't surprising. People like him rarely enter situations without preparation once they feel challenged. That was fine. I had preparation as well. Truth. Before they left that night, I opened a drawer, took out a small digital recorder I used for community interviews, and placed it on the table. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You've had that?" "Yes," I said. "I'm done dealing with this kind of behavior on their terms." Emily looked at the recorder, then at me, and for the first time, I believe she saw me differently. Not just as Jake's sister or someone who had been humiliated, but as someone deliberate and patient. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at Mark Whitmore's estate. I knew he would agree, not because he wanted resolution, but because he expected to regain control. The days leading up to it were quietly tense. Jake updated his resume and tried to manage his frustration as opportunities slowed. Emily moved between guilt and clarity, reading messages from her mother and setting her phone down as if each one carried weight. I focused on practical tasks, organizing my apartment, answering inquiries about the literacy project, and keeping my thinking clear. I wasn't interested in reacting emotionally. I wanted a position that couldn't be dismissed. That morning, I dressed simply. A navy blouse, black slacks, and the same low heels I had worn to interviews for years. No jewelry except a silver ring I had bought for myself after Jake graduated, a small symbol of having made it through. Before leaving, I placed a recorder in Jake's hand. He looked at it, then at me. You've thought this through. I've had experience, I said. People like Mark rely on others being too reactive to document anything. Emily took a breath. If he apologizes, I don't want this to escalate. Neither do I said. But if he doesn't, then we move forward with evidence, not opinion. Mark's house matched expectations. Expensive, precise, and impersonal. The gates opened before we even reached the intercom, suggesting he had been watching. Inside, everything was polished, but nothing felt comfortable. Mark and Patricia were waiting in a formal sitting room designed for presentation rather than conversation. Emily stayed close to Jake, but she didn't rely on him. Mark remained seated. Patricia acknowledged us with a brief nod. Thank you for coming. Let's be efficient, Mark said. If this is meant to confront, I prefer it direct. Jake remained silent, though tense. I sat across from Mark. This is straightforward, I said. You publicly disrespected me. You interfered with Jake's employment. You blocked a literacy grant unrelated to you. Emily asked for one opportunity to address this before it becomes permanent. Mark leaned back. You're using strong language for routine decisions. No one humiliated you. A joke offended you. And I acted within my rights to protect my family. Emily looked at him. Protection? That's how you describe my husband? Mark finally turned to her. I describe him as capable, but influenced by emotional obligation. That matters when you're involved. Jake gave a brief, restrained laugh. Just say it. You think I come from the wrong background. Mark didn't deny it. Background shapes judgment, he said, and your sister's influence is not beneficial. Even Patricia shifted slightly at that. I met his gaze. The only reason my brother is here, educated and moving forward, is because I sacrificed to support him. If that makes you uncomfortable, that reflects on you. Mark's expression tightened. What concerns me is the narrative, the idea that hardship alone earns access to spaces you didn't qualify for. Emily went pale. People like you, Patricia intervened quietly, but Mark continued. Yes, people who equate need with virtue, people who expect recognition for survival, people who bring past struggle into every situation and call it dignity. Jake stood abruptly. Don't speak about her like that. Emily stood as well. Dad, stop. Mark rose more slowly, his tone stripped of politeness. No, I'm done pretending this is about manners. Your marriage began with public disrespect. Your husband interrupted your wedding to defend someone who keeps him tied to a past he should have moved beyond. I stood. Moved beyond? Loyalty, gratitude, memory, those should be discarded. Mark gave a cold response. They shouldn't control him. Emily shook her head, her expression firm. I used to think you were strong. Now I think you avoid anything you can't control. That affected him. Be careful, he said. No, Emily replied. You should be careful because everything you say makes it harder to respect you. His tone hardened. If you leave this house supporting them, you do so without my support. No trust fund, no apartment, no access to anything I've built. I will not fund disrespect. Patricia closed her eyes as if this was familiar. Jake stepped toward Emily, but she raised her hand slightly and stopped him. Her expression steadied. Then keep it, she said. Keep the money, the apartment, everything. I would rather build a real life with someone who understands respect than accept comfort from someone who uses humiliation to feel important. The silence that followed was significant. Patricia spoke softly, Emily, please. But Emily remained focused. You didn't embarrass Hannah because she was weak, she said. You did it because her sacrifices reveal how limited your version of success really is. I reached into my bag, took out my phone, and placed it on the table. Mark frowned. What is that? The moment you realize this conversation is no longer private. I pressed play. His recorded voice filled the room. Once Emily is legally protected, he'll either learn gratitude or learn scarcity. Patricia's expression shifted to shock. Then the second recording played. People in poverty often present sacrifice as something noble. It's usually failure with better storytelling. Jake stayed still. Emily didn't react outwardly. They simply allowed the truth to exist in front of him. Mark stepped toward me. Where did you get that? That's your concern, I asked. Not what you said. His expression changed, then hardened again. You don't understand how serious this can become for all of you. I held his gaze. No, Mark, you don't understand how serious this is about to become for you. We left his house without further discussion because at that point, the facts no longer needed explanation. In the car, Emily wiped her tears, looked at me, and said, "Post it." So I did. I uploaded the place card, the recordings, and a clear statement outlining everything that Mark Whitmore publicly humiliated me at my brother's wedding, used his influence to interfere with Jake's job opportunity, and blocked a literacy grant intended for children, then repeated his position when given a private opportunity to respond appropriately. By the next morning, the story had spread widely. The recordings circulated quickly. The place card made the situation worse because it was direct, intentional, and impossible to justify. Within days, Mark's company announced he was stepping down during an internal review. Two major partners withdrew from ongoing deals. A charity board removed him. Investors began distancing themselves. A man who once believed influence could control outcomes was now facing the limits of that belief. However, the real consequence was not financial. Emily did not return. She cut ties, moved out permanently, and made it clear that he had not only disrespected me, but had also lost her respect as a father. Patricia left the family home weeks later and moved into a separate apartment. Meanwhile, the literacy project Mark had tried to block gained unexpected support. After the situation became public, donations came from teachers, parents, and individuals who believed in its purpose. What had been restricted privately began to grow publicly. 3 months later, Mark came to my apartment alone. There was no assistant, no authority in his tone, just a man who had lost both personal and professional standing. He stood at my door and said, "I was wrong." I looked at him and understood that he had finally learned something fundamental. Humiliation does not create strength, it reveals character. I did not invite him inside or offer comfort. I simply said, "You lost what mattered because you believed kindness was weakness and money outweighed character. Accept that." Then I closed the door. That was the true conclusion. Not because he apologized or faced consequences, but because he lost something he could not restore, the respect of the people he believed he was above. The team behind Revenge Argon works to create meaningful and engaging stories that leave a lasting impression. This is a fictional narrative designed to present valuable lessons and thoughtful messages. It emphasizes dignity, loyalty, and the importance of standing against unfair treatment. It also highlights that real worth is not defined by wealth or status, but by character, sacrifice, and compassion. The purpose of this story is to encourage respect for others, thoughtful reflection on fairness, and learning from difficult experiences in a constructive way.